Welcome to the Spinwhiz Comic Show.
Whoa.
From Raleigh, North Carolina. Join us for exclusive interviews with the publishers bringing you the newest titles in indie comics, webcomics, movies, and more.
No way.
And now, here's your host, Jeff Palumbo.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Spinwhiz Comic Show. I am always your host, Jeff Palumbo. Here on a Wednesday night, thank you for joining me. Hello to everybody that's coming in. Derek Sterling, welcome to the stream. How are you, buddy? For those of you that are watching live, thank you so much for being here. For those of you who are on YouTube watching after the fact, that's okay. You're still important to me. You're still important to us. And all the links you don't have to worry about, everything that we're mentioning that I'm putting in the Facebook chat, don't sweat it. It's going to be below. So all you have to do is scroll below and you'll get it. But tonight we have an awesome guest, somebody that I've probably known almost for 2 years now. We've been talking back and forth. I ping business ideas off of him. He tells me they'll suck or not, which is amazing because sometimes honestly, sometimes from a business perspective, especially in this industry, you really need somebody to be able to bounce ideas off of because so many people are creative heavy and not business heavy. But my guest is also super business heavy and super creative as well. So that's, why he's here. So I'm pumped to have him. It's going to be great. Feel free to ask questions if you're here. I'm going to bring him in, although it looks like his audio or video may have frozen. And I don't know if he's there or if literally he might have just fallen asleep and is just like, wow, this is just... All right, there he is. I got him back. So we're going to get him in here without further ado. The man of the hour, my friend Travis McIntire. Welcome to the stream, buddy.
Hello.
So for those of you that don't know, Travis is not only the CEO of Oxeye Media, he is also the editor-in-chief of SourcePoint Press, which is where he and I know each other. SourcePoint Press is one of our publishing partners. We currently have 49 of their titles on spinwhizcomics.com, and we are uploading a whole bunch more. I'm trying not to. COVID throws me a curveball every now and then. So
believe me, I know.
Yeah. So we have a whole bunch of stuff coming from SourcePoint Press here in the next probably week and a half. We have a whole load of print on demand coming in the next month. We have featured Dead End Kids before, which is a great title from SourcePoint Press. We've also done Franklin and Ghost. We have put together stuff for, amazingly enough, Frank Gogel's been around a couple times. If you caught the interviews with Frank Gogel, we don't like him much, but
no, I don't like him much either.
No, I mean,
lies.
We've seen him at shows. I've seen Travis literally try to put him in another booth thinking that it's a SourcePoint Press booth, but he keeps finding his way back. And Frank is a Boston fan as well. So it just... So anyway, hopefully he'll come in and talk some garbage with us because he is a extremely talented writer. And luckily he's with SourcePoint Press because they're both great people. So Travis, thanks again for being here, man. I greatly appreciate it.
No problem. Glad to be here.
Let's talk business because, as I said when I was kind of teeing everybody up, a lot of the people I talk to are creative types. They're writers, they're artists, they might do some of their own social media, but that's not really business. What you do is you literally run a very proficient company, and actually you run three of them, really, right?
Yeah, three really. I mean, it's one we incorporated last year in July, so we're the parent company is about a year old now, and that encompasses SourcePoint Press, Deepwater Games, which is the tabletop gaming company, and Design, which we do like gaming accessories and e-gaming accessories. That also we do a lot of manufacturing under that name. And then, now we're about to launch a toy label and a few other things. So it kind of just gave us the ability to put all of our resources into one basket and made my life running. Because I do, we have a real CFO now, which is really nice. We've had since about February. we have a real CFO, but for a long time, I did all the back end, all the accounting, all the cash flow, everything myself, which was, kind of a nightmare and just a ton of work. So this has made things a lot easier from the tax perspective and just kind of keeping the books to put everything under one umbrella.
Yeah, and so with all of that, obviously a lot of the things you're doing are actually blending into one another. Are you finding that the content that you're creating for each company is the same or different, or are you trying to overlap some of it? Because you have a lot of great titles and ideas from SourcePoint that could easily be melded into any of the other companies, especially Deepwater.
Right now we actually have three comic titles that are moving into the game space, and we have 2 game titles that are moving into the comic space. So we have let's see, the Franklin and Ghost tabletop game that's going to come to Kickstarter September 4th, I think, or maybe it was the 8th. I don't remember off the top of my head. But that'll be the first one. And then there's a Monstrous game in development. There's a Salvagers game that we're on like the 3rd iteration of. So there's a lot that goes on there. I mean, it all comes down to IP development, right?
Yep.
So you take a comic book and the margins are slim and it's difficult and it's a hard slog and there's tons and tons and tons of competition. And even books that are that are brilliant, maybe sometimes they don't get the attention they deserve. And then you got Frank Gogol kicks out some hack garbage and they take off like crazy. So
I'm telling you,
there's no telling what people are going to like.
I agree.
We can take some of those, the IP that we believe in, and we're able to sort of in-house continue to invest in them and push them into other products and try to continue increasing what I would call their footprint in the marketplace.
Yeah.
All about ultimately giving them what's the right word here? Ultimately giving them a story, like the way to kind of look at this is that you have your comic and your comic comes out and maybe it's a one shot, and then that one shot that maybe you did a Kickstarter for that got 250 backers, and then that turns into a 4-issue miniseries that we put out and it comes out through Diamond and Cornerbox and everywhere else, and then it has a digital life on all the platforms, like Spinwhiz and Comixology and everything else.
Mm-hmm.
There we make a simple $9.99 card game that goes out and ends up on the we have Barnes & Noble distribution and things like that for games. So it ends up out there on, as a cash register type game. And then from there, we do maybe like a more fully immersive tabletop experience. And all of those things are like building blocks in the story of what your IP does on its way to, maybe it turns into a cartoon series. Maybe it turns into a series of shorts on Quibi. Maybe it turns into a feature film. Maybe it ends up on Netflix. Maybe it goes to Apple TV. Maybe it goes to Disney Plus. Who knows? But it's all about trying to just actually increase that footprint and, give things as much life as we possibly can.
Yeah, that brand extension, especially in what we're doing, is super important. And I think a lot of people aren't doing that. I think there are a lot of great IPs out there, but they don't have the people to necessarily have the foresight to do what you're doing. And there's tons of great, super popular IP that just dies because they get their trade paperback and that's it. And I'm like, oh my God, like how? So are you seeing that a lot, or is that why you really started this? Because you're like, we have this great IP. Why would we just let it die? Let's expand that brand and get some more out of it.
I think a lot of it, to be completely honest, a lot of it came down to the fact that it gets so tiring so fast to constantly feel like you have to ask permission from somebody else to make something cool. Mm-hmm. That was ultimately why I wanted to start a comic publisher. It's ultimately why we took the comic publisher and started a game publisher, and ultimately why we're doing this other stuff. And now we're doing manufacturing. We're involved in toy manufacturing, and we just signed a partnership deal with an animation studio and all these different things. is because ultimately you get kind of sick of. It's a lot more fun to have a conversation that is like, all right, boys, we've got this many great projects and this much juice. We got this much money and this much power we can put behind them. Which ones do we want to develop and go for? As opposed to like constantly kind of go in with your hat in your hand, hoping that somebody picks something up and makes a decision about what they're going to make or what they're not going to make. So it's more fun to just do it yourself.
Yeah, that's for sure. And obviously more lucrative in the back end too.
Well, yeah, I mean, it can be. It also can go the other way. I mean, I can personally attest to that.
Yeah, I'm sure you can. Yeah, I'm sure. Now, how did you, like, that is not easy what you're doing. I mean, how did you first get into SourcePoint, and then how did you really start teaching yourself the expansion theory of what you're trying to work on with your IPs? Like, where the hell did you learn all this stuff?
So for me, it comes from my corporate background as a research scientist, which was my career prior to kind of starting to do this more, as I worked my way into doing this full time. So my mind is very analytical and it's very project oriented, and it's very much sort of trained to be like, okay, so this is the problem I'm trying to solve today, and this is how that problem leads into the problem tomorrow, and this is ultimately what we're trying to build. And maybe that thing you're trying to build is like, okay, I'm looking at a polymer additive that will bond with bitumen, which is the material that is the key ingredient in asphalt. And what we're trying to do is figure out like, hey, can we make an asphalt road a little bit more structurally like a foam if we can get certain type of polymer to bond with this, so it'll still be hard and be a road, but it'll have more give to it. That way, when it gets cold and then hot and then cold and then wet and then hot and freezes, it doesn't crack as easily. And maybe a road will last for 13 years instead of 40 years, or something like that. So this is your brain starts to kind of learn how to take this enormously huge project and problem and just chop it into little tiny pieces and be like, okay, well, this is the little tiny piece I can do right now today, And I'm certainly not like the smartest guy or any of that. I have two things that really work for me. Like, one, I'm a grinder. Like I'll do the 22 hours a day for 6 months in a row if that's what it takes to do this. I'll just put my head down and get it done. And the other thing is that I'm really, really good at chopping things up and being like, all right, here's the stuff I need to do tomorrow, and then here's the one after that, and here's the one after that, and here's the one after that, and just keep doing it until 1 year from today I will have accomplished this thing that seemed impossible, when you were just looking at it and from the aggregate.
Yeah, well, that project management skill is amazing. To be able to put things into compartments and break it down to a level where you're always moving forward is really, I for those people watching, it is really, really, really hard to do. To be
you came from a big corporate background, didn't you?
Yeah. I still work full time for Lenovo.
So you're probably familiar with all the various, Six Sigma and
Yep.
methodologies and all that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Some of that stuff is great and some of it's less useful, as I'm sure you know.
Oh, yeah.
But that my train, that's what my training is. Like I have the belts and all the nonsense.
Yeah, the green belt and the black belt and master class and all that other stuff.
Well, not that high. That's more of your life than I was willing to give for that stuff. But like really what it does is it just like it's like 80% like fluff and nonsense, like teaching you how to think logically, basically. But that 20% of tools that you pick up is really something and very useful. And when you apply it to something like this, I think that it enables you to really start doing some cool stuff. And of course, I also have been extremely lucky that I met Josh Werner early on, and he's a machine and basically just knows how to do everything. And we've had a team of creators that are second to none in terms of their, drive and work ethic, and just, because we didn't have distribution, we didn't have any of that stuff. We were just like touring like a punk band, going convention to convention to convention to convention.
Mm-hmm.
And it took a couple of years of, people have asked me many times, like, well, how did you afford to do that? Like, I worked a day job. It was a pretty good, lucrative day job. I just set money on fire for 2 years before we started making a profit at all.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and then it took another couple of years after that before I was, before we had built up to the point where, like, okay, cool, now we've got, we have all these pieces in place, and next thing you know, now I own a warehouse and I have an office and I've got 9 full-time employees, and it's, and then you look around and you're like, I don't know, I'm not 100. I was here for most of this, but this seems pretty crazy. Yeah. I don't know if you're responsible for people's kids' college funds, but here we are.
Yeah. Well, and I think what you have with you, and you brought it up, is the people you have set around you hustle. Like they push, they're amazing writers, great content, great artists, but they push like crazy. So it's not as necessarily how many people you have on the bus, it's do you have the right people on that bus. And you have some crazy people that push. Even Frank Gogol, who's in the chat right now, Frank says, this is the kind of great guy he is. Love that Jeff's in a nice office and Travis is in his murder basement. I mean, that's the kind of good person you have working with you.
No, yeah, and Frank is he does. I'll give Frank this. He, what he lacks in raw talent, he makes up for in hustle. But this is not, in fact, a murder basement. I'm going to tell you a quick story. So we got COVID-19 happening, right? And that's great. And I have a 7-year-old and a 6-year-old. And the two of them are high in the running for worst people in the world. They're awful. And, haven't been able to do much or go anywhere. I'm going to put it to you this way. I threw a Nintendo Switch in the garbage today.
Wow.
Today, that was a thing that happened.
It went there.
A Nintendo Switch went into the trash can. And then there were 2 like sobbing, inconsolable boys. And then, but I did pull it out later. But like that you get to that level all the time. So you have all that happening. The kids are trapped at home. They haven't been able to go to school. You can't take them here. You can't do that. There's all these things. They're bouncing off the walls. On top of that, our air conditioning in our house doesn't work. And it is so horrifically hot here. It was over 100 degrees in our living room last week. Just absolutely miserable. So we have 2 rooms in our house that we went and bought air conditioners for. Mm-hmm. Like, all right, we cannot survive what's happening right now because we're soft Americans, and that's the world I live in. So originally I was sitting in a chair in the master bedroom, which was my bedroom. And I was literally like 60 seconds away from logging in and start talking to you. And my wife came in and was like, absolutely not. You're not doing a video interview in here. Get out. You have to get out. So I am in the guest bedroom, and I am laying on the bed. As a matter of fact, because there is no chair or desk or table in here, like if it weren't so dark behind me, you could see that like a teenage girl, I have my, legs, kicked up behind me. All that. And I'm into the computer. So it's the only other cool room in the house.
Yeah, that sucks.
Otherwise, I'm basically living in a sweat box at the moment. It's terrible.
Oh my gosh. Now
it's supposed to be getting taken care of here before too long, but it's like the worst, just miserable.
Oh, that does sound awful. We had ours break maybe a couple weeks ago, and we had one room basically that we had one of those air conditioning units in, put it in the window, and we just all hung out in that room.
Yeah, that's what we have going on basically. Is we have the guest bedroom, which now the kids are sleeping in when it's not in use for the guests or something. And then my wife and I have our bedroom, which is where we have air conditioning.
Yeah.
And so you put that on top of COVID, and you basically just have, standard American nuclear family where every member can't stand the sight of any other member.
Yeah. Yeah. I completely get you. There are most times it's okay, and other times you're just
pretty standard. So it is not a murder basement so much as it is a murder guest bedroom.
Yeah. Yeah. A blacked out murder bedroom with air conditioning at least.
Yeah, it is dark in here. I suppose I could turn the light on.
I mean, I can see you, but I mean, I didn't know if there were lights. I didn't want to be the guy to be like, well, like,
what's going on in there? What are you doing?
Be like, I don't know what kind of room that is, but I'm not going to judge.
Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it, Jeff.
It's fine. It's fine. That's why you see the glare of my face from the computer screen. Everything else, don't worry about it.
Yeah, just enjoy yourself. You're doing fine.
It's fine. Yeah. Don't worry about what's behind me. Just worry about my face.
Yeah, exactly.
So let's get back to SourcePoint real quick. And how did you start? You were a writer, were you not?
Yeah, that's how I got started. I started off. I wanted to be a writer. That's part of one of the things I went to school for. And then, one thing led to another. One of those things was, I needed to make money. I started working in the science field, which was one of the other things I went to school for, which, was at the time much more lucrative. So I did that for a couple of years. And then, I got married when I was 29, and I had been kind of leaning back into getting into writing right before then. And, I decided I wanted to do a comic. So I did a comic and, tried a few different things and, went to a couple of conventions and, had people look at my scripts and this and that, and ended up kind of getting an artist to do a book, had that book, found another artist, started over, did all that, met Gary Reed, who was the editor-in-chief and founder of Caliber Comics at the time, which I was a big fan of from, was a 90s kid.
Mm-hmm.
He ended up publishing a book that I did called Biani. The book, I have a soft spot in it for my heart, but it didn't really do well or anything like that. But through that, I kind of really got to know Gary, and I started kind of helping out with Caliber stuff behind the scenes because I was extremely responsible. Around the same time, I met Josh Werner and Trico Lutkins, who at the time had started SourcePoint as sort of like their own little label. I got along really well with those guys, and we were just talking about things. And around the same time, I was doing this. I put together a charity anthology with a bunch of Michigan creators. And kind of through doing that, I realized that, like, brass tacks, I was a mediocre creator. I was good enough to be published, probably. Maybe in the long run, I was good enough that I would maybe have one or two things that maybe had some mild, moderate success. But I probably just didn't have the raw talent to really churn out something great. But I did think that, after working with all these different people and kind of shepherding these projects along, I sort of started to realize that what I was really good at was editing and project managing and kind of like making a thing that is okay good and a thing that's good great. And I just leaned into that. I started to enjoy doing that kind of thing even more. I started to feel like, it's like one of these things where when you finally stumble across something that you're sort of just good at, it doesn't feel hard anymore. I feel like you ever really struggle with it. It's like when you get irritated sometimes, or like you're overwhelmed sometimes, but you're just grinding through it, and it's not tough. So one thing led to another, and I ended up kind of joining Josh and Trico with SourcePoint, and then around that time, I put a little bit of money into it, and we actually turned it into a real company, an LLC, and all that. And then, it was kind of just off the races from there. It started off just doing some of our own stuff, and then kind of the first guy who came on board is Greg Wright. I don't know if you've met him before or not.
Nope, I never met Greg.
You should have him on. He's funny. But he was one of the first creators who came on with us, and he had the miniseries Monstrous, which we've now are issue 18 or something. But that was sort of our first book that we signed kind of outside of our nuclear little family there. And then he, that book, it was kind of weird. Like, that book happened, and Greg was so good at selling it that all of a sudden we were making more money than we were spending, which was a very new experience. And then, and so we just were like, well, every extra dime, we're just going to make more stuff. Luckily, it's continued. It's just sort of continued with that. Any chance we get, we're just trying to make more stuff or do bigger and better or more things. I mean, I'm not 100% sure. I mean, I think right now, this second, at least in terms of comic publishing, we're probably going to be at a holding pattern through the end of 2021. I think that, right now we're publishing 12 books a month, into the direct market, not counting exclusives, variants, retailer exclusives. We have a line of novels now. There's 2 publishing imprints that do specialty books, ebooks on every platform. And we probably are not, Josh and I were actually talking about this the other day. I think we're probably going to sit where we're at for maybe a year, and before we try to, kind of expand again and see if we can get bigger. One, we ultimately are going to need more help. So we'll probably have to start looking for some, a new employee, maybe another production manager type of person like Josh is, or something like that. We would probably have to get to the point where we have more help on that side of things. I mean, now, like, even just doing submissions is a hugely time-consuming process.
Yeah, and I mean, I congratulate you. And honestly, you have put things together and learned on the fly, and I'm sure you've made mistakes. Maybe you haven't, but I'm sure you've made mistakes that you're just like, holy crap, who would have known? But you don't know. I've made a bunch of mistakes with Spinwhiz already, and have they cost me money? Sure, but now I know better, and that's part of it. So, I congratulate you. From one business person to another. We actually line up our backgrounds, obviously not with the chemistry stuff that you do or scientist stuff, but I launched my book just like you did. I had a bunch of people read Chimera. I had almost 3,000 people read Chimera, and this was 7 years ago now. Went into Kickstarter. Kickstarter failed, and I'm like, well, if I have all my engagement strategy and sales and all that stuff that I know how to do and I failed, other people must be having a hard time in the indie community, and they did. So Spinwhiz Comics was born as it is now. Now, it took me 5-6 years for myself and my partner to get it here because we didn't have the money. And now, I mean, I've gotten some minor investors in. We're starting to move. The app's coming out. Print on demand's coming out. We have pre-orders coming out, or at least the offerings coming out. And finally, things are starting to spin in that correct direction. And sometimes it just takes that forward momentum to all of a sudden start picking up a ton of speed. And before you know it, you're just like, holy shit.
Yeah, it definitely, it's definitely the sort of thing that, like, once it does start to go, it goes fast, and it changes quickly. It's scary sometimes, when you realize, like, I mean, like, I still remember, so Josh has kind of been with me the longest. I still remember 3 years ago when he went from being a guy who had a job, who did this as his second job for free, to a guy who made his entire salary doing this. And that was long before I got to that point. But that's something that can still keep me up at night.
Yeah.
Just like, I tell you what, you get to the point where you're like, people are depending on you for a paycheck, and it starts to get, it definitely gets real in a whole other way.
Yeah, and I haven't taken that jump yet, just because we're not bringing in enough. You have your teeter-totter. We're not bringing in enough yet for me to do anything, because we're still in that growth phase. But when is that going to happen? Hopefully, in the next couple of years, if not sooner. If things really take off, then I get to start spinning up what I am good at. And, going to exactly what you're good at. Once I found out that I was really good at sales and engaging with people. So that's what is great about a platform. But I want to eventually hire a marketing person and a content person so I can do more of that to help out more independent people and companies to really take them. And not so much, hey, we're going to cookie cutter everything, but what is it special about your company specifically that we can help you with to really expand and capitalize on it? And SourcePoint, you and I won't get into stuff that you and I have spoken about offline, but you have some very specific competitive advantages over even some of the bigger guys that we are going to capitalize on with you, and it's going to be amazing. So I'm just giving everybody a little teaser right there. Travis and I already have a couple things in the pipeline of what we'd like to try. But I would like to do more of that, because I think a lot of people do have passions, and to be able to take the business side that a lot of people don't like and help them out with that could be a very big opportunity for everybody, a win-win all the way around. So I look forward to doing more of that in the future.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, indie publishing, especially indie comics, especially. Well, I'm going to take the back. Games is harder. Games is really crazy, because the cost of entry is so high that it's really, really difficult to be like, I'm an independent game producer and I'm going to make this game and get it out there and get it out into the world. I mean, it can happen. I know guys who've done it. There are a lot of designers. There are a lot of designers who do, little mini things, and they'll throw them up on Kickstarter and whatnot. But in the gaming space, Kickstarter is almost entirely taken over by, and we do it too. When we do a major game Kickstarter, you're talking about a 5-figure marketing campaign, and
Yep.
Big budget and all this stuff, because your assumption is this Kickstarter is going to make 6 figures. That's what it takes. And you're out there competing with a bunch of legitimate companies. That's what it is. So that space is even harder. But, comics is indie comics is a very, 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 very difficult row to hoe, very hard. And if you don't want to, I don't know how you do it. If like the things that you're talking about, if you're just like, I don't want to do any of that stuff. I don't want to do marketing. I don't want to do this. I don't want to engage with people. I don't want all that. I just want to write and do the thing. Like, there's only 2 ways that happens. One, it's your hobby and you're happy with that and you accept that it's your hobby, which is 100% fine.
Yep.
Like, I don't have any judgment whatsoever if that's who you are. Great, dude, that's awesome. It's a great hobby to have. There are plenty of people who have worse hobbies,
Mm-hmm.
And my wife is kicking in here. She's distracting me, ruining my interview. Go away. You beat it.
Laura's in the chat right now. I actually see her in the chat room.
Oh no, she is in the chat room.
Yeah, she's helping you. So, because Bob Sally came in and Frank and Bob were tag teaming up on you.
Oh, were they? Well, you know what? That's like the lion does not concern himself with the bleeding of the sheep. So.
And I will say this: I still haven't had Bob Sally on the show yet. So I met you through Bob about 3 years ago. And I still haven't had. I feel bad that I haven't had him on the show. So Bob,
I don't remember that, but I'm going to try not to hold that against you.
Well, I mean, we weren't friends. I just,
we were. Look, it was just an acquaintanceship. It was a Bob Sally acquaintanceship.
Yeah. Well, Bob was really just starting off, and he and I started talking just about indie comics, and it happened. He's like, well, you should talk to. I kind of told him about what Spinwhiz is going to be, and he's like, you should talk to you. And that's how you and I kind of started talking. But that was years ago.
Bob, actually, he's the guy, if you want to get somebody on here to talk about the ups and downs of indie publishing, Bob knows more about it than most, because he has run the gamut. It's to finish the thought I was saying is, there's two ways. You can either be like this is a hobby for me, and it's not. It's, I don't care if I make a living. I don't care if I make a ton of money. It's a hobby. Fine. 100% fine. That's great. It's a great thing to have. Or you're a transcendental genius, and the stuff you do is just so good that, it's going to cut through the noise no matter what.
Yep.
But if you're just sort of like everybody else, then you gotta get on that treadmill, and get out there and figure it out. Or surround yourself with the right people. And, in my case, I've been really lucky in that I've surrounded myself with a lot of the right people. I've found people to fill all the spots that I'm not awesome at that they are, I kind of plug in and be something for them to help them take their, my life is miserable.
No. Well, I think she read just what happened on in chat, and so those of you that aren't in the chat room and YouTube, you're missing out. But for those of you live, Pat came in and said the lights just went on. For those of you watching, the lights just went on, and Pat came in and said it was better with the lights off, Travis. And then Bob said exactly those lights came on and I died. So you're really you're really getting shit on from a lot of people.
Well, see, here's the thing though. I really can't see myself because I'm just yapping. Let's see. What do I look like now?
I think you look wonderful. I mean,
probably pretty rough.
Man to man, you look just great.
Thanks, buddy.
You're welcome.
You know what? Good enough for me. I'm not gonna bother looking.
Yeah, no, I think it's great. And now, but now that Bob is gonna potentially be on the show, he's got to step up. Like either he.
Look at this! Look at her sneak. Oh, now she's turning the light off.
Did Laura just haul ass? Is she just like, nope, don't do that to me. Don't put me on the show.
Oh yeah, she's afraid.
So let's talk really quick again. A lot of people that are coming in right now. A lot of the interviews I do are with writers and artists and creative types, and that's great. But Travis and I, we talk quite a bit of business back and forth. Not as much as I would like to, but we're both super, super, super busy as well. And part of the reason I wanted Travis on is because we do want to talk a lot of business, because he's the first CEO or EIC or combined, superhero of comics and everything else you're doing. So let's talk briefly about when you really want to do something, but you can't, because I find what I find is that I don't have enough money when certain things pop up and I'm like, I really want to do that. And then I can't because our air conditioning breaks and I have to pay for that instead of putting money into the company, or my tutoring, or who the hell knows what's going on. And you get these opportunities that come to you and you're just like, I would love to do this. This is great. And you're like, frickin' A, I can't do it. I want to see how you handle that. And do you just be like, now you're just like it'll come back. If it's meant to be, it'll come back. Or are you just like, well, shit, we need to find a way to do this?
Yeah. So the reality of all of that is where we're at now is probably it's similar to what you have going on, right? Like, so we have shareholders, I have a board of directors, I have a fiduciary responsibility to all those people. Make decisions that I think are the best possible decisions for the health of the company. And so that means sort of walking a line between, like, okay, so we set out certain financial goals and plans for this year. You know, many releases, this many games on this schedule that are this much cost and have this much revenue. But at the same time, this business is a business of constant opportunity. Everyone is constantly throwing opportunity at you. And if you aren't careful, you will choke yourself out by trying to take too big of bites.
Yep.
So I don't know. It's really hard. I mean, what you're talking about is literally the hardest thing. Is it goes from like, this is an amazing book, but we kind of have a book in the pipeline that's very similar, and I don't have a spot for it in the budget, and you know, I'll let it go somewhere else. You know, to like, hey, this game company, which has, you know, eight titles, and 2 of them have Barnes & Noble exclusive deals already, and the guy's, he wants out. You know, he wants to sell controlling interest. You know, like, I just had that come up, you know, a month or so ago. And, you know, you have to make decisions that are like, yeah, you know, you just can't do all the things, you know, and also you kind of have to trust your plan. You got to try to trust your plan, and you got to try to move forward. And at the exact same time, you have to be open to things. And, you know, you have to know that sometimes things do come along and you need to jump on it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's a weird disconnect, you know?
Yeah.
Sometimes you're like, yeah, this is not a great opportunity, and we have to bend over backwards or figure out how to do it, you know? And other times you just have to just let it pass and see if somebody else picks it up. And I don't know. I feel like in a lot of ways I've been very, very fortunate in that I haven't had a lot of major whiffs. I've had one really, really major one that, you know, I lost a lot of money, a significant amount of but that's sort of the only major one. But the nice thing about that is, oh yeah, there she is.
Oh yeah.
There's the nice thing about that is it's an education that you can't buy, and it's one of the things that no amount of me or anyone else ever telling you, like, hey, you ought not do this thing because that might not work out so well for you. No amount, if you're like the type of person like me who's like, I'm going to run my own company, I'm going to do this, I'm going to make these decisions, you know, like, nobody telling me that is going to stop me. But now I know, you know.
Yeah.
That's an education that is you can't pay for. So it's all good.
Yeah.
In the end.
Yeah, well, we're in the same phase that, you know, when you and I talked, and I will say this, it's only myself and my partner. A lot of people don't know that my partner and I have been building this for the last 7 years. And it's just, we both work full time, and he's a freaking godsend. Like, he and I have not made a dime off of this company yet. Like, we put anything that I make, I'm like, hey, do you need something? He's like, nope. Like, every time, nope. And we both work, you know, we have full-time jobs. We come home, we eat, hang out with our kids, try to hang out with our wife, put them to bed, and then it's time for work part 2 until 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning, pretty much every morning. And he is, like, I ask him all the time, I'm like, listen, man, you're just coding nonstop and building stuff. Do you want to do some business? And he's like, hell, I will leave tomorrow. Like, I'll leave now. I'm done. Like, he's like, no, you do all the business, you do all the talk. So we have a great relationship that I come up with the crazy and he builds said crazy. But to the point that we were talking about, we wanted an app 2 years ago, but we couldn't afford it. And then we were in between, like, do we wait for try to get an investment, or do we have him take time out of what we wanted for the website and start to develop an app? So now it's a time management piece of what is going to create the most benefit for, not for us currently, but for our publishing partners, so that we can build off of that. And I have to say that has been one of the most difficult things to do, because there's only so much time in a day between Marcus and I. Mm-hmm. And he'll say the same thing. He's like, why are you up? He's like, I'm coding. What the hell are you doing? I'm like, well, I'm building out a meta file, or I am talking to some people because there's a deal I'm trying to work on that'll help us for promotions, or whatever. Or working on the fact that our AdMob account doesn't work and we're about to launch our app on Wednesday. Like, it's all these things that are just like, holy shit. And he's like, can I help? I'm like, do you want to? He's like, not really. I'm going to go back to code. So
really,
but you have to prioritize. It's just as hard as prioritizing money, which is prioritizing time and being able to do that. So how have you prioritized time?
I think that for the first several years, I was really, really bad at it. I would even go so far as to say that I probably potentially did some damage to my home life during the first several years of this, mainly because of the travel. I mean, at the height, the most I ever did was 48 conventions in 1 year, me personally. Right, so that's
holy crap!
Every single weekend, traveling all over the United States and Canada. Honestly, like, the COVID thing is awful as it's been. In some ways, it has vastly improved my life, just because it forced me off the road. And I stayed home, and got to hang out with my a lot more and hang out with my wife a lot more and do all that. So that's been really cool. And I don't know that I would go back in the same way that I was. Essentially, what it comes down to is, and this will happen to you too, is that you will have to make a choice. And the choice will be, okay, there is money coming in. Do I want to put that, even though I have been putting my own money into this for a long time, and eventually I do want to see it come out. Do I want to start taking that out now, or do I want to give that money to someone else and have him take some of this off my plate? Mm-hmm. And I would bet that for you, and definitely for me when it happened, it was like, no, we need more people. I'm not going to grow unless I can get more people, and I'm going to burn out, and Josh is going to explode at some point soon. So we need more. So that's kind of the first thing, is you get more people on the team on the 50 hours a week grind. That's the main thing.
Yeah. And we're again, we are hurtling towards something big in space. And you've seen us grow. I mean, when you came on board, you were our 21st publisher partner, and now we're at 85. So, like, that's a massive growth, but I need to get somebody to help Marcus. Like, he's constantly coding. I need somebody for front end. We need a content manager that can help me onboarding content. And with that, I can do all the rest of the stuff. So it is a difficult, I'm just saying, from a business perspective, CEO to CEO, I just wanted to make sure that I wasn't in the boat by myself doing something wrong. And I'm just like, oh shit, this is bad. But I think everybody goes through it.
It's kind of the only way, really. There isn't really another way that it goes. I mean, I think you get to the point where you are like, okay, cool, I've built this up enough to where, I can do one of two things. You either start taking money out, or I can hire somebody. And if you want to keep growing, then you hire somebody. And and then you grow up to you hire someone else, and then hopefully a couple years after that, you're like, hey, who's going to get a salary now? Me.
Yep.
It's going to happen now.
Yeah, my partner knows he's the first one to get hired, even over me, because he has been so good and done so many things, and his head probably hurts every night. And I'm like, Marcus, you're going first. Like, you will be our first full-time employee. I will work full-time and then do this continually.
Yeah, you'll get there. I mean, the biggest hurdle you have is that you're really trying to build a technology company. Right?
It pretty much is a tech and marketing company. Yeah.
So you're talking about every single thing that you make is really, really expensive.
Yes, it is.
And very, very time consuming to make. Whereas if you're a publisher like us, we were able to monetize much more quickly than you would be able to monetize. Because I can take $2,000 and turn it into $8,000, like that in a weekend at a convention.
Yeah.
Just like, we printed some variant covers, so the monetization is easier.
Yep.
The nice thing that you have is that, we're paper mongers, right? At the end of the day, and I think I've literally had this conversation with you more than one time.
You have.
Digital's great, and I hope it becomes a thing, and I hope that one day somebody in the digital space really figured out how to capture what makes a comic special in the digital world, and I hope it's you. But until that happens, at our heart, we are paper mongers. We sell, and that means that it requires a massive amount of effort on a monthly basis to keep that rolling. Whereas you eventually, this theoretically should get to a set it and forget it.
Yep.
And then you move on to you're like, okay, cool. This is our maintenance schedule, and I'm going to move on to something else.
Yeah. Yeah. Keep picking it up. And
some other internal project or something that's going to be cool to do.
Well, that's why we've had to start onboarding print. So, next month we'll have print on demand. That's why we have pre-orders coming up to help people that don't want to necessarily do they can still do Kickstarters, but for instance, we'll take any of the content that you ever wanted, because previews is gone, and at least into the format that it used to be in with Diamond. Indies don't sometimes want to deal with that, so now they'll be able to pre-order everything through us and have it direct shipped, and they get it within 5 to 7 days, and it's worldwide. So
no, it's I'm familiar with the parent company of what you're using, and they're one of the biggest, one of the best, and in some ways one of the most difficult.
Well, I still have to. We have our discussions. Let me tell you that right now. It's going to be really interesting. I hope that it works out the best for you. We work with that company. We don't do comics with them at all. Great.
We work with them in the book space, and we've done some good business with them. They are, they're a major player in that world. And when you're a very, very small fish and you want to try to swim in that big pond, they don't have any financial incentive to really care about what you're doing or anything like that. So
yeah, I found that.
If you can get them to do what you're trying to do with a drop ship, print on demand, I don't know how you talk them into waiving their setup fees. That's the most amazing thing to me.
I did tell you I was good at sales and engagement.
I don't know how you got them to do that. Because to me, that would have been the deal killer. Like, how are you ever going to be able to?
Well, you and
I don't know how public it is. I don't know how many people watching this know who we're talking about. So that's why I'm not.
You can. It's we're announcing it in a couple weeks as soon as we.
All right,
know. You're good. You're good.
Yeah, we'll just keep it. We'll just keep it on the low. But like that particular company has a fairly steep setup fee, and I am very surprised that you somehow weasel your way around it.
Yeah. Well, we didn't waive the whole thing. I I put some money where my mouth was, and they put some money where their mouth was, and we came.
That's not agreement. Nothing. That's, I mean, with the amount of books you're talking about having ready to roll, that could have been a significant financial barrier.
Yes, yeah, but that's definitely an offline discussion that you and I can talk about. But regardless, I think I had a whole lot of praying, and I worked a whole lot of magic, and I gave a business plan that was meant for investors to some people that wanted to see what I was up to, and they're like, holy shit. And it hit the right people, and they're like, we want to see this. We want to see what you have to do. So they waved a whole bunch. Oh. That's the gist. Is it?
That's not a bad deal, man. I mean,
yeah, and well,
it works out good.
Yeah, there's some other things that are a little whoop, but in general, the hope is that the reason I did that is because we want revenue, because we don't make anything unless we sell your content as well. But we need enough to start phase 2, which is really that engagement strategy that I've been talking about with you, and the ability to have your own store in our store, to have content that you can sell through. And that's not anything I haven't talked to everybody about. Like, that's stuff we're going to do. And these things that are just going to differentiate us. It doesn't mean that people that are doing digital should never not be on Comixology. But to, again, have another reason why they'd want to be with us. And if we can stack the deck in our favor, then it becomes a home for where people can discover great content. I can help build out what indies really need from a fan base, and then we can extend from there. And then that's where a lot of the variants and all that fun stuff starts coming in. We can really start doing business. But to get it to that point, like you said, it takes years to get it to that point. Not necessarily that it's on maintenance free, but like, we need to get to a point where we are at a level playing field, and then you can start doing the cool stuff. And we're about to be at a level playing field. And it's super exciting. Super exciting. And, I can't wait to have Bob on the show. Now he's here. Garrett Gunn is in the chat. Another great, that whole Franklin and Ghost thing seems to be doing okay for him. And, I want to have him on the show. But again, it's less about me. I mean, I've never met Bob actually personally, but Garrett I met him at C2E2, and it's about
scumbag.
I know. I mean, you warned me ahead of time. I knew Frank was going to be there, but at least he was the left part of the table, and Josh buffered me from Frank. But
that's lucky.
A lot of that is, how do we create, at least in my mind, how do I take that next step as a business person to help everybody out? Because when everybody wins, we'll be one of those only companies, because I know from some of my competitors, they don't have that next step. They're on autopilot. They're doing what they're doing, and that's it, where we're trying to consistently make it better. So hopefully a lot of people see that. But my wife is like, so when's this going to happen? And I'm like, you're supportive, and I love you. And I'm sure you and Laura have had that discussion. Like,
yeah, but just like so much more violently than that.
I mean,
I'll put it to you this way. I am no longer allowed. I am not allowed to spend any significant money or start any new companies without discussing them with her first.
Wow.
It's like a rule.
Yeah, probably a good idea.
So, when you have piled a couple $100,000 into a pile and set it all on fire, then we'll talk about conversations with your wife.
Well, and I think you're one of the only people from a business perspective. Now, granted, I know other CEOs of companies, but not as well as we know each other. And I think you're probably the only person that, if I told you how much I've dumped into Spinwhiz Comics to get it to just to this point, you'd be like, yeah.
Like, it would be very difficult for you to surprise me. I'd be like, oh, that tracks.
Yeah, no, I think you would say that. You'd probably be like, yeah, but like that is about. But in knowing that, I think I have a ton of respect for you for what you've done, knowing what you've put in, knowing how you're growing, knowing how you're constantly surrounding yourself with the right people, even though I think Frank was still a mistake. Knowing that the people that you have with you can kill you too. Like, you have one person at one show that is violent, or they show up on some racist internet thing making a stupid post, and because your company is still while it's expanding, is still relatively small, that can hurt you. But you have the right people with you that are hustlers, that crush it, that have great content. You have a supportive wife that will only throw, hopefully, not great china at you anymore.
No, she's great.
Like, I think I give you tons and tons of credit to not only start to keep pushing and to expand with that brand extension, that whatever it does for you, I give you a massive amount of credit.
I'm sure you're well aware of this, but right now especially is a very interesting time in this industry.
Mm-hmm.
And as much as some of the old patterns are starting to get broken up, and some of them for the first time in 35 years are starting to get, and things are changing, and some of the things that we thought were unassailable aren't unassailable. And I always look at stuff like that, and all I can see is opportunity. All I see is like, oh man, like there's openings. You know what I mean? Like, there's openings above my head, and if I can find a box to stand on, I'm gonna put me in that spot. I'm gonna put my company there. Right now is a key time. Unfortunately, the same situation that has gotten us to this point where, like, man, there is some real opportunity, is also a situation that has made the VC world and the investment world super volatile.
Yep.
It is really, really hard right now to find that guy who's like, yeah, I've got a bank account with $20 million, and I'd like to invest a couple hundred here, a couple hundred there, do this, that, and the other thing, and just throw spaghetti at the wall. It's like, right now, this second, it is really hard to find that guy.
Oh yeah,
harder than it's ever been to find somebody like that who wants to try stuff.
Yep.
So it's like this. It's this two-edged sword. It's both like, man, there's a ton of opportunity, and also it's the cash that you would need. Like, the investors who are interested in that kind of stuff is very difficult to locate.
Yeah, super.
So essentially what that means is guys like me, guys like you, most of these fools who are watching this, guys like them, we got to find creative ways to put that box under us to step up, because there's a lot of opportunity to be had right now.
Oh my gosh, there's so much, which is what kills me, because I'm like, you know what? If I had an extra coder and I had a front-end person and I had this, we would just be smoking it. Like, we would be raking in cash like it's nobody's business.
Yeah, and you're not even talking about any like shoot the moon, like money, not like $500,000 cash. Like, if you just had that much, like, hey, buy me a year
mm-hmm.
with a real team, you could have something.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Just, I mean, the gaps that I see, and you probably see them as well, simply from, I already have done a competitive analysis, so I know what is lacking in my competitors. And now that the distribution lines are opening up it's like Swiss cheese now. Like, there are spots that I could drive a Mack truck through it and hit nothing but air. And
the distribution market is a very, very interesting place right now.
Yep. It is crazy.
And the comic retailers have always been a fractious lot who don't agree on much.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know if I have ever seen them as fractious as they are right now.
Mm-hmm.
And what that kind of has translated to is that for the first time, many, many retailers and people in the industry, are open and willing to try something completely new and completely outside their comfort zone, and be like, what are you trying? What are you trying that's brand new? What are you trying that's different? Show it to me, And I don't know. Like there's been more gloom and doom talk about the industry lately than there has been in probably the last couple of years. But for me, I don't know. I kind of see the opposite.
I do too. I see a massive opportunity.
Yeah, I just see like, man, we are on the cusp of like a golden age, a new golden age of like creativity in the art form and new ways of doing the business.
I'm also seeing a major flux of people gravitating away from Marvel and DC for whatever reason it may be. Not to get into anything, non-political reasons, where they're looking for new content. What I'm seeing is that people that are sticking with what Marvel and DC do are, a couple of them do good Kickstarters, but they're wondering why their stuff's not selling. And then you have other guys like you and some other people that are like, you know what, we'll follow a couple things, but we need to find other paths and other ways to do certain pieces. And you're starting to garnish some of that industry stock because
definitely. I mean that basically what you're talking about is sort of like the standard market share, right? And for the history of comics, at least in terms of our lifetimes, has been Marvel, DC own almost all of that market share.
75%.
Yeah, but what you're actually seeing, I think, is a little bit less of like, Marvel and DC sales are down. I mean, comic sales, they're probably never going to approach what they were in the 90s.
Right.
Now, if you have a book that comes out and does 100,000 units in a month, that's a huge success. 100,000 units, your book was canceled. That's a garbage number. So it's certainly a different world. But what I think I see is that companies like us, a lot of other smaller publishers, Scout is a good example, Aftershock is a good example. And then, some of the more, I think, forward-thinking of the big publishers, the best example I can think of is Boom. What they're doing is instead of, I feel like we kind of have all stopped being like, okay, hey, I don't want to fight Marvel for X-Men dollars. I don't want to fight DC for Batman money. That guy's not going to give me his $4. I don't make Batman, right? And I think that a lot of the other publishers have been like, what we need to do and what's going to make retailers love us is try to bring new people into that store. Instead of trying to convince their existing customer to give them $4 for my book instead of $4 for a book they already have, that's a zero-sum game from their perspective.
Yep.
If I can bring 5 people who aren't currently shopping at their store to come in and shop at their store, like all of a sudden I'm super valuable to them.
Yeah.
Because I'm just bringing opportunity through the door. They don't know what it's going to buy.
Yep.
And I think that a lot of the smaller companies and a couple of the more forward-thinking big companies have really turned their focus. And I see this when we do like the retailer summits and stuff like that. Really turned their focus to less about that market share, less about that, the 1.2 million comic buyers that buy on every Wednesday of every month, the ones that exist, and have existed since 1988, or whatever. Less about them and more about like, where are these new readers and how do we get them to come into these stores? Like the growing demographic of people reading comics are young women, but where are they buying their books? Because that's still not the largest demographic of people walking into the comic store. Where are they buying their books? Well, the answer is they're buying their books right now at bookstores or at book fairs or things like that. The highest selling comic book or comic book writer, artist, I think over the past several years has been Raina Telgemeier and probably Dave Pilkey, who does the Dogman books. They do. I mean, I don't even think those books come out through Diamond. Right?
No, they don't.
If I remember correctly, those are graphics, which is which they're the biggest player in the game, and that's great for them. But those in terms of standard comics, they're not a blip, right? But realistically, any one of those editions is selling more than the top 300 comic books combined at any given month. You know? So I think that the question starts to be like, where are those readers? Where are they buying their books? And can we talk them into coming into this type of store? Can we make that type of store the type of store they want to come into? You know? So then you get into this new type of retailer that, you know, is running a different type of retail environment entirely. You know, it's a little bit more of a boutique atmosphere, maybe. You know, whatever it is. I mean, I don't run a retail store, but I've seen it with my eyes. You know, like the difference between like, oh, this store is not doing well, and it's all because of this, that, and the other thing. And like, well, this store is still doing quite well. You know, I've seen the difference, and it's because they're shifting around and looking for those new readers and those new customers. And I kind of think that that's really more the key than it is about competing with Marvel and DC and trying to like chip away at their market share. You know, I'm not interested in that. I'm interested in like, how do we get brand new readers coming into the store? And they're coming in buying our thing, and then maybe they're buying, I don't even care what else while they're there. You know, that makes the retailers, that really gets them excited. That makes people respond. Yeah. It supports the backbone of the whole market of everything that we're trying to do. So, you know, that's, you know, for you're probably sitting here like, you know, I mean, digital is a part of that too. I'm not trying to kind of cut you out of this equation.
Oh no, you're not.
Digital is a big part of that too. But when I start thinking about like the market share and readership and all those things, it's always about like, how do we find, you know, the people who are passionate about this art form and the passionate about reading this stuff now, you know? Yeah. And where are they at? What are they doing? And can we get them to start coming back to the comic book stores?
Yep. Well, let me share a very unpopular opinion in the indie world and what I'm seeing and why Spinwhiz is pivoting a little bit. And obviously print being a big thing, and you're right. I don't want to compete against Marvel and DC, and that's why we don't have them on the site. Not to mention the amount of money they want to post anything on the site is just ridiculous for licensing fees. But they can keep their 75%, and that can be 100% of the market. What I'm trying to do is take the other 25% and using my background and expand that 25% into its own industry. So if that 25% equals 1.4 million people, well, let's expand it to 2.8 million people, and let's raise the average order value per person from $15 a year to $45 per year. That is what I'm trying to do. Now, here's the unpopular opinion. Digital will not make you rich. Digital, in my opinion, and I will say this just to preface, I have a background in marketing and sales. I have an MBA. I've been doing this for a long time, not in comics, but in other things. Digital, in my opinion, while it's great to sell PDFs and stuff like that and offer it because everybody reads differently. Some people want PDFs, some people want print, some people want both, some people want exclusives. And we are going to expand into all those because we do not want to stop people on how they consume. We just want them to consume. But when it comes to a lot of indies, they forget that marketing is what makes your fan base grow, which is what over time makes you more money. Digital, in my opinion, is worth more as a marketing dollar than it is versus a sales dollar. Meaning that if you can acquire a reader for what it costs you to put out a digital comic, let's just say it's 99 cents. And that person spends over the next year with you, even if they read your stuff and they know about it and they don't buy right away, chances are 2 or 3 issues in, and then they're still there. They're going to like it and they're going to buy exclusive. They're going to kick a Kickstarter. They're going to be the first ones talking about you on social media. They're going to watch your video. They're going to buy the game. Something will trigger them to purchase. And now you have taken that and you haven't lost anything. You've just put $1 into marketing. And you've created a $20 person. So what do you think about that strategy versus, hey, I want to sell all my stuff. I don't want anybody to read it. You're either buying it or nothing. Because there are a bunch of people out there, some on our site, that are like, I don't want them reading it unless they're buying it because that costs me money. Where I'm saying you're going to make a shitload more if you let people read it, and over time they will become a customer.
No, I mean, I completely agree with you. I think anybody who's saying that is probably short-sighted. And also, I would. Oh man,
you can tear me up. It's not gonna. You're not gonna hurt me.
No, not you. I mean, I have all kinds of unpopular opinions. We could do this all night.
Somebody get the beer.
There is. If you are an independent creator, it's certainly not impossible, and there are definitely people who have bucked this trend. But if you're an independent creator and you are at all under the impression that digital is going to, in a direct way, recoup any of your production investment, I mean, if someone asked me, I would say absolutely not. Mm-hmm. It's not. You're better off. I mean, you are better off to make it free, 100% free, and and then use that reader, like figure out a way to get it so that you're collecting email addresses or something, something along those lines has more value than the 99 cents a click. I mean, it's the way to look at it is like this. So Webtoons, right? I'm sure you do.
I happen to know about them. Yeah, I heard about
them.
They're the elephant once or twice.
They're the elephant in the room in digital, right?
They sure are.
And some things that they do that I think is awesome. I do really like that it's built for digital. Mm-hmm. I think that's really cool. I think that you have a ton of creators who are really doing some really interesting things. I think that they kind of sell it to creators of like, oh yeah, you're going to make money. And it's like, no, you're going to make money if you're already famous and you get out there. Like, same way you're going to make money doing a podcast. If you're already a celebrity, then yeah, maybe. Right. Yeah. If you're a superstar, you'll probably do all right. If you're not, you're probably not going to make a dime.
Which I am not.
Well, yeah, sure. So they've got probably, I don't know, like what the current leadership is, 70 million people or something.
Something like that.
Within 24 hours of them putting up a 25 cents a week paywall,
it dropped.
That dwindles 85%.
At least.
You're going to lose almost every single person.
Yep.
Then they're going to find out that, like, man, we just spent the last 6 or 7 years training our entire readership to expect this as a free thing. Mm-hmm. And that's all well and good, and that's fine. And I don't think there's a problem with it as a free thing. And there's a lot of creators who figured this out. A lot of creators who have, we have done it for people, in fact, where we've taken their book and the format that they made it for that, and then reformat it into a normal comic book, and then they do a Kickstarter, and then they get some money through it that way, and things like that.
Yep.
I think it's. I want you to get the wrong idea. I'm not against the free aspect of it.
Sure.
I'm against the it feels to me like a little bit of a bait and switch to the creator, I guess is what I'm ultimately trying to get at, because you're not ever going to get anything from that. Like you'll have. I know some people who have really huge readership numbers. Mm-hmm. I'm like, that's great, dude. We have books that have 1/10 that, but they're all buying a physical copy of the book.
Yep.
And I'm making 1,000 times more money.
Mm-hmm.
You are better off to have 2,000 people who are a big fan of yours, like 2,000 people who love what you're doing, who will buy 3 products a year. Pretty much have yourself a full-time job.
Yep.
If it helps you get to those 2,000 people by making a digital comic a free thing, by growing that readership and using that as a bait to bring them in to, like, hey, I'm going to make a Kickstarter, and the Kickstarter is going to have enamel pins that are only available there or whatever, and now you've got them used to buying a product that goes along with this thing that they got for free. And, that I think is the way to do it.
Yeah. And I agree with that. That's
I'm
kind of where
digressing a little bit, but.
Well, no, I think you completely, I think in a roundabout way you agreed with me, and that, I do agree. I do agree that the digital is marketing. The digital is marketing, and I think that they're more valuable, at least as like issue ones and whatnot. Like issue 1, 2, like make it a tease and get people in, like give them a chance to read the thing. Because as soon as you put up a paywall, and it's not even a matter of them, like most people won't do it. Like, even if I'm like, I'm kind of interested in reading that, but I just don't want to put in my right. Yeah.
I want to dick around with it. I'm just not going to. I'm just too lazy for it.
Yep. Yeah. But if you
could easily give you this $1, but I'm just not going to.
Yeah.
Just not.
Yeah. I don't want to type in
Walt's not on me
20 numbers. Yeah.
I just don't want to.
And you're right. But I think.
But let them read it, and then they'll be like, man, that was really good. And then you hit them with the ask, And I think what I was trying to compare is that with like a model like Webtoons, they're training their entire readership. This is free and should always be free.
Right.
They have to step away for creators to get paid, but it only rewards like the very tippy top.
Yes, that's right.
People who are already walking in with a pretty large audience.
Right. And that's what that's why we're different, and that we're trying to help people grow their audience. Even if they only have one issue of one title, we at least try to help. That's why they can call me and get marketing ideas and all sorts of stuff, but it takes time.
Yeah, I mean, I try to if we get a submission in and it kind of gets through our submissions editor, which means that he read it and thought that was something I might find interesting. Mm-hmm. And then it goes to me and Josh still. One of the things we do is we check out that creator's social media, and I don't care how many followers they have. I don't care if they have a giant page, a tiny page, nothing. What I care about is like, are you engaging with the people that are friends, that are interested in what you're doing? Like, are you good talking about what you're interested in? And are you engaging with them? Because I can coach the rest. I can get you to. I can show you how to grow the 10 to 100 to 1,000 to 2,000, and at that point, now you're good, man. Now your book's going to do well.
Mm-hmm.
Now you're frank, basically, and you're out there making your whole year's salary sell 100 variants to people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's getting it to that point, but I'm glad that you think the same way, because that obviously the people that are going to think the same way that we do, I feel that in the next couple of years, specifically if of what COVID's doing, but for independents in general, if they start using that methodology, I'm going to say with me just because no other site really does it yet, but if they start doing that, I think that they will see that will happen, and that the 1.4 million will expand out to 2.8 million. The average buying of $4 will become $12, and then all of a sudden,
that's exactly it. That's exactly it. Increase the size of the market, man.
Yep.
Like, stop trying to fight for the same dollars.
That's right.
Bring more of them in. It's an exciting time. There's a lot of new stuff that's coming up. We should be getting into some pretty interesting things. I think more people than ever, and different types of people than ever, are interested in reading comics.
Yep.
And you know what? A huge reason for that is Marvel and DC.
Mm-hmm.
The movies and all that.
Sure. Oh yeah.
That made people be like, oh yeah, comics are a thing. And then when they showed up at a store or jumped on Comixology or looked wherever they were and were like, oh my God, I had no idea that this was that,
Mm-hmm.
It's a pretty interesting time, and there's a ton of opportunity. I did want to say something about the marketing, because I think part of the problem you might be running into.
Hit me.
That marketing, when you're small, marketing feels like wasted money.
It does. Yes.
It just feels like spending money on nothing.
Yep.
And that is so hard.
It's a black hole of nothing.
Yeah, and it's so difficult to track.
Yeah, the ROI is almost impossible.
The ROI is hard to measure, and sometimes it takes so long for it to show up. And then you start thinking like, oh, well, yeah, but you can take Facebook ads, and they're super trackable. And I'm like, yeah, they are. But how cool is any of that stuff? But, I don't know. It wasn't really until about halfway through last year where we had kind of grown to the point where we're like, okay, cool. Now we have a real marketing budget. We have a monthly budget that we spend on marketing. We spend on advertising. And it took a couple of months, and we had to, we couldn't afford a full-time marketing professional, but we did have consultants come in, help us kind of build a system, do this. And I tell you what, after about 3 months, we were like, this is what we would like to be at, which was basically like a 4x return. After about 3 months, we were at 7, and it was, you couldn't quite pinpoint like how and why, but we're at a 7 to 1 return, and then after 6 months, it settled in. Now we're at like a 12 to 1 return on some of this. You kind of keep up with it, and we've pretty much leveled out at this point. But like, that's a big part of the reason the lights are on, is that we keep spending that money, and it keeps going. But when you're new and you don't have that budget, and you're not just setting it aside, and you can't just be like, okay, cool, I'm going to let that roll for 6 months.
Yeah.
We'll revisit. It just feels like spending money on nothing,
Yeah. Oh, for
it's
sure.
really hard when your concern is, I spent $2,400 paying for art on my 22-page comic, and I need to make that back.
Yep.
When you're like, well, if I sell 24 of these, for $2 each on Comixology or whatever, then theoretically I should get $2,400 back. And that feels like a achievable goal. That feels like the sort of thing where it's like, yeah, I think I can do that. I think I can get that done. But that's really hard. If you want to throw a couple $1,000 behind marketing, you might get there. But and a ton goes into it. And I'm not a marketing professional, so I don't want to talk too much. We have some advanced, and then we have a variety of product lines with a million different things, different types of things. So it's more complicated than that. But I think for the average like indie creator or small publisher that is really sort of just getting started, or maybe they've been around for a long time, but they're just focused on a very few number of things, I think marketing money feels like just spending with no return.
I agree.
It's really hard to wrap your head around.
Super hard. And that's what I'm trying to help people with, is the fact that, and that's why we want print on demand and print options and sale options after that to be so apparent, is so that they can still make some of that back, obviously. And the good thing is, unlike a reoccurring revenue driver like you have now because of your SEM and SEO, that a lot of these guys don't have that kind of money. So what I'm trying to help them see is, listen, you already spent the $2,400, right? And now I understand you want $2,400 back. Everybody does. But remember that if you let people read it for free, you're technically not losing any money either. You're really you're trying to turn that person into who is going to spend $4 or $5, or when you bring out a variant, they're going to spend $20 because you signed it. And I think that is why we have to do print, so that people that do want to trigger and do pre-orders, that's a big part of the pre-order piece that we're going to be putting together, and the ability to hook into your own inventory on the back end. Eventually, that's going to take a while, but it's because I'm trying to help them. But what we're going to do is, I'm going to be hopefully in the near future funding Chimera #2. And I'm going to show them with my own money and my own content, and have a use case as to how it works. Because if I can't put my own money on don't get me wrong, I put a shitload of money into Spinwhiz.
Yeah, sure, for sure.
But if I can't take my own content and use it the way that I would do it, instead of using it with, actual SEM and SEO and pushing the product and, doing partnerships and all that stuff, but do it the way that they would do it and prove that it works over time, then that will help gravitate people to that methodology.
Yeah, I mean, you got to pull it out of the black box.
Sure do.
You got to pull it out of the black box and show it and be like, all right, this is what this actually means, and this is how it pays. This is when it should start to pay. I mean, I break this down with creators a lot to be like, like I mentioned earlier, what I'm kind of good at is chopping things up in bites.
Yep.
And I always try to put it in like, okay, you got 100 people. You ran a Kickstarter on one book and you had 98 backers. All right, cool. You got 98 people who are willing to give you some money, some amount of actual cash on a thing. Cool. That's not nothing, right? No. That's a start. So start there. The goal is like, next, I want there to be 150 people. I want a 50% improvement, and that means that you're going to be on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter and all the things. You're talking about your thing, getting people engaged with it. And if you kind of put in the effort, I mean, not now, you can't, but like in the past, it was like hit up 6 conventions a year if you can. Invest in yourself, invest in your time, find your readership, and then double that to 300. Well, at 300 people, now you're talking around probably a $7,000 to $8,000 Kickstarter, right? So now that's enough to cover 2, maybe 3 issues. You might have just gotten yourself a full 4-issue mini series, and now you've funded a trade. Because now the trade, like now you're talking a real margin.
Now you're Frank Gogol.
Yeah, now you're talking maybe a $14.99 cover price book or higher. Something that you come to somebody like us, we can get that into bookstores. It has an ISBN. We can start. That's something that is a lot easier to make money on. And then you've got 300 people that are behind it already. Go that to 500 with a trade release, except now you do a Kickstarter and it's a hardcover version of the trade, right?
Yep.
Then that raises 15,000.
That's right.
Soon, and you've done this, and it's taken you 3 years, but now you've paid off every nickel that you've spent, right, making the thing. You have a really nice book, and you're ready to launch the next thing. But now you've got 1,000 people behind you, ready, right? And now you're ready to go into Diamond and do the stores and it just isn't hard. Like if you're dedicated to it and you have a modicum of talent, it can be done. It's
a hustle.
Yeah, it is a hustle.
Yeah, and that's what I'm trying to help people with, is just getting to that point. I 100% agree with everything you just said, because that's my breakdown. And that's what I'm just trying to add more pieces that may help bump them a little bit quicker. Especially without conventions. We have the potential of creating a site that feels like a convention or offers things that a convention would, because conventions I hope come back. But again, they're only 0.2 of your overall population or potential buyers.
I hope they come back. I think it's going to be a little while before they come back at the.
We've got 2022, buddy. I don't think we're going to see one in 2021.
I don't think we're going to see one like we might see a couple, but we're not going to. It's not going to be like they were last year.
Yeah, the big cannabis convention is still happening in Pennsylvania.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, big cannabis show. I guess I'm not. That's not really my thing, but I saw it on Facebook. So, that's still going on, and they're all going to wear masks with bongs attached to them.
That's a great idea. It's a great idea. But there's a lot of money in that business.
Oh, my God. I mean, that's a whole nother discussion. You and I could literally have another discussion about if we weren't in comics, what business would we be in?
I'd be in that business.
Yeah. Oh, I'd be. Oh, my God.
I don't smoke or use at all.
I don't use it all either, but I'll tell you what. I like money.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's not even so much that. It's that, like, that's an opportunity-filled business,
Yeah. Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, it's like the people that are the munchie companies that, like, the chips and stuff like that, they're hoping that industry takes off because they know that a whole bunch of people, and some people creates the ability or want or need to eat, and they, there's all sorts of ties.
I think I heard that like tobacco companies were buying up states that weren't legal yet.
Mm-hmm.
companies were buying up land, and under the assumption that within the next several years they would be legal. They'd already
that's what North Carolina's
ready
doing.
to start. They'd already be ready to start growing.
Yeah, North Carolina's a huge tobacco state, and all of a sudden you're like, why aren't they growing tobacco there?
Because they're getting ready to grow wheat.
Mm-hmm. I mean, North Carolina will be the last state that does it, but when they do, you can also guarantee that they will have the most of it. So, anyway, buddy, we have been on the phone. We have been talking for over an hour and a half now.
All right. Well.
So, I mean,
I was lying in bed, which is true.
Yeah, Ryan's like, is he in bed? And technically, you are. I mean, you're ready for bed. You could actually, if you go, Laura might already be in bed. She's like, forget you. I'm done.
Well, and after talking to you for 90 minutes, I am feeling a little amorous. So maybe I'll see what she's up to.
I mean, I do that to people.
You do.
I mean, it's a side effect of talking to me that much.
I want you to know going into this that this is a guaranteed failure, but I'm going to try anyway. Just...
Me too. Well, you know how it is. We've been married long enough and have kids.
I've been married 11 years. I know too well.
Yeah, I got 10 years coming up, and
I threw a switch away today. That's what my life is like.
Yeah. I almost ate our breakfast. We had BLTs for dinner. I almost ate our dinner for breakfast, and that was the kind of day that I had.
Yeah, no, I know how it goes.
Yeah. So anyway, listen, man, it was thanks, Derek. Derek Sterling saying great shows. Thank you for everybody that came in. There's a lot of people that I think you and I are going to talk about very shortly. Travis, you could introduce me to, like, just to get people that you have that are on the show. I mean, Frank's already been on twice, but Bob, Garrett, some of the other, Josh. Well, Josh and I actually did we went through and did Rotten Tail. We hosted Rotten Tail with Dave. So awesome. and that was awesome. So more of this. I really appreciate you taking the time. I mean, again,
no problem, man. It was fun.
For everybody on YouTube, Travis is a CEO and EIC and understands business probably better than most people in the industry right now, especially in the indie industry.
Well,
I mean,
maybe in the swamp. You get into the swamp of it. I've been around a little bit.
We're all living in the swamp right now, buddy. But we're gonna make our way out, or at least make something awesome in the swamp. So, I appreciate it. If you can hang online just for me 1 second, I'm gonna tee off for everybody else, and I'll be right back. Hang on me just one second.
Thanks.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for being here. Great interview with Travis. He and I have some amazing conversations offline. Every now and then, obviously, we're both extremely busy, but, I'll say hi, he'll say hi, and all of a sudden, an hour and a half later, we're literally talking about something else over text, and we're just chatting the whole time. So, thanks, everybody, for being here. Thanks for our wives for being supportive. And honestly, this is what it's all about. It's about guys like Travis trying to help indies grow. It's the guys like me trying to help companies like Travis's grow to whatever extent I can, even though right now it's small. But in the near future, all of us together, an army of ants is still an army. And you can take down a lot of stuff, and I think that's happening. If people get on track and people are like, listen, we can do things differently and make a bunch of money and find ways to do it, and say Marvel and DC or Marvel and DC, that's great. But everybody else is somebody else. Indie has a way of taking a huge part of that. So thank you, Casey. Much appreciated. Casey Pierce, he's offline. I think he actually died in his room. I don't see him anymore. So anyway, thank you all for being here. Thank you so much. Please follow if you haven't followed already. Just Spinwhiz Comics on here. If you haven't checked out our site, please do. Source Point Press has a whole bunch of stuff. I'll drop a link in because I forgot to do that. Son of a gun. The whole time Travis is probably like, dude, you going to drop a link to all my stuff? Here is in chat. And if you are down below, like if you're on YouTube, check down below. Links to Source Point Press on Spinwhiz are on there. He's got a ton of other stuff. We're onboarding a ton of their content. We'll probably have close to 100 titles in another 2 weeks or so. It'll probably be 93, I think I counted. Travis could tell me, but it's close to that. And then Casey Pierce, yes, you're in charge now. Travis is dead. You're in charge, and take over. And then obviously Dirk, great to see you. And great to see everybody. Thank you so much for being here. Check us out Sunday. We'll have another one of these, and we look forward to talking to you soon. Have a wonderful day. Enjoy the rest of the week. Happy hump day, and we'll talk to you later. Have a good one. Bye, everybody.